This presentation, Starting an Accessibility Journey, 5 Easy Tips, offers an overview of digital accessibility and why it is important. It also introduces 5 easy accessibility tips anyone can learn in just a few minutes. So let's get started. What is digital accessibility? We are all digital content creators. Think of everything you share online each day, from email to syllabi to slide decks. And think of how many students and colleagues use our materials. Making our digital content accessible means learning and applying best practices and tools to the materials we create, so people with disabilities have equal access to our content. Accessible content is essential for users with disabilities, many of whom use assistive technology. At the same time, accessible content is helpful for everyone because it makes our content stronger across the board. People who use our content have different access needs, and learning basic accessibility skills goes a long way to removing barriers for disabled students and colleagues, neurodivergent students and colleagues, readers who are experiencing stress or anxiety, readers who are multitasking, readers with low or unstable internet access, and English language learners, just to name a few audiences. So why is digital accessibility important? In the previous slide, I listed just a few of the many audiences who benefit from accessible content. If we take a broad view, there are 3 key reasons it's particularly important for the UW community to create accessible digital content. Our students. It ensures that students with disabilities have full access to our course materials and builds stronger, more inclusive courses that all students can engage with. Then there are 2 key elements of UW's mission: preservation, advancement, and dissemination of knowledge, and serving the public good through education and discovery. And finally, there's the newly updated Americans with Disabilities Act, the Title II rule, which now states that all public institutions and universities must make digital content, including academic course content, accessible by April 24th, 2026. It's important to acknowledge that digital accessibility is a new concept for a lot of people. If you don't have access needs yourself or know someone who does, you may be entering new territory that feels daunting. That is why it's helpful to remember that accessibility is a journey. On this slide, there's an image of a yellow sandwich board with a sign that reads, "Caution, trail work ahead." It's the type of sign you might see in a national park trail. I like this image because we're doing our own sort of trail work here. It takes time to remove accessibility barriers and to clear the path for our students to have full access to our course material. And it's a journey of small changes. Incremental progress may feel slow and frustrating at times, but a sustainable practice of learning new skills and applying them to your work is doable. So today we'll start with 5 easy accessibility tips. So here we go. You can start applying any one of these accessibility tips right away, even on the next document you work on after watching this video. Here are the 5 accessibility tips: structured headings, alternative text, also known as alt text, meaningful link text, color contrast, and accessibility checkers. Accessibility tip number 1, use structured headings. Every authoring platform has a built-in tool that helps us write headings that are coded as headings and embedded into the content. Structured headings are announced by screen reader technology, so users who are listening to the content rather than seeing it understand the document structure and can choose how to navigate it. Structured headings also help us create tables of content and navigation panes in our documents. We use structured headings because assistive technology cannot recognize headings created manually by styling tools alone. For example, sometimes we might make headings by increasing the font size, or bolding text, or underlining or italicizing text. Visually, those look like headings to people who can see them. They're not coded that way, so assistive technology will not recognize those headings at all. Essential tool heading styles. All authoring platforms have tools for creating structured headings. These are typically called styles. On this slide, I have partial screenshots showing what these tools look like in Microsoft Word, Google, and Canvas. These tools are always located where the styling options are. Typically, you'll use heading 1 for titles, heading 2 for main headings, and heading 3 for subheadings. Keep it simple for basic course content. You might wonder why Canvas begins with a heading 2 on the screenshot. That's because Canvas pages offer you a separate text box for a title, and that's where the heading 1 title is. Accessibility tip number 2, add alt text to simple images. Alt text is the abbreviation for alternative text. Alt text is a description we write to describe images, and it lives behind the scenes, so to speak. Most readers do not see the alt text, but blind and low vision readers using assistive technology will hear it. And students listening to audio files of your Canvas content will hear it too. It's important to write alt text for all images. When writing alternative text, keep your description of the image short, grammatically correct, and no more than 1 or 2 sentences. Focus on key image details that point to meaning and context. What is this image meant to convey? Alt text should offer the same clarity of meaning for the person who does not see the image as it does for the person who can see the image. Writing alt text takes a little bit of practice, but it gets easier over time. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see a partial screenshot of an alt text description with an approve and edit button alongside it. This is from Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. Be cautious of AI-generated alt text. Always review it and edit it carefully. AI will not know the context and purpose behind your choice of image, and auto-generated descriptions are often oversimplified or flat out incorrect. Essential tool for alt text is the alt text field. All authoring platforms offer you a space for adding alt text. On this slide, I have a partial screenshot showing what the alt text tool looks like in Microsoft Word, Google, and Canvas. Newer versions may open the alt text field automatically, and some will populate it with AI-generated alt text. Note that the Canvas screenshot reveals a checkbox next to the phrase decorative image. Microsoft products also have that option. When an image is on your slide deck or in your document purely for visual interest and has no meaning that's important for context, you can mark it as decorative and the screen reader technology will ignore it. Please note that Google does not have the option to add decorative image, so you will still have to add alt text. Accessibility tip number 3, use meaningful link text. We all share lots of links throughout our content, and this accessibility tip is one of the easiest tips for you to build into your workflow right away. The way to make links accessible is to replace the long alphanumeric URL or a vague phrase like click here with meaningful text. On this slide, I have 2 sentences with links. Revise sentences with long alphanumeric URLs in this way. So instead of the first sentence, which reads, for more information on accessible PowerPoint presentations, click on https://www.washington.edu and so on. Instead of doing that, revise your sentence, edit it a little bit, and replace the URL with an informative phrase like in the second example on the screen, which reads, learn best practices for accessible PowerPoint presentations from Accessible Technology Services. Notice that the phrase accessible PowerPoint presentations is in blue font and underlined. This is because it's a live link. All readers these days assume that blue underlined content is a live link. And screen reader users who are listening will hear the meaningful phrase instead of a bunch of letters and numbers. Accessibility tip number 4, use strong color contrast. These are very simple examples on this slide, but using sufficient color contrast is an important accessibility best practice for many things, including graphics. While we can often just look at something and see if color contrast is not sufficient. Accessibility checkers are really the best way to spot poor color contrast and to get guidance in fixing it. On a simple level, we can compare the yes and no examples on this slide. The dark font against the bright yellow background in the yes example is a little obnoxious, but it offers a clear example of successful contrast of a dark font against a light background. The no example, white font against a gray background, is probably visible to many of you who are watching this video on a personal device or phone that's close to you. But imagine how difficult it would be to see that white font against a light gray background from a classroom, from the back row of a classroom or conference room looking at a screen. Or if there was glare on our screen or bright lights overhead, it'd be more difficult to see that. That's one example, a simple example of why color contrast is important. We also want to avoid using color alone to convey meaning. Many people have color blindness, and some cannot discern color at all. So if we use color alone to emphasize something or to convey meaning, then we create a barrier. It's not wrong to use color, but we want to pair color with additional ways to highlight meaning, as in the second example. The no example has red font only to determine which deadlines are final. The second example, the yes example, offers a description of what is final and then suggests adding a bullet list of the dates that are final with no late submissions. Accessibility tip number 5, use accessibility checkers. This is my favorite tip because anyone can do this at any time. So on my screen, I have partial screenshots showing partial views of accessibility checkers in Microsoft Word and Adobe Acrobat Pro. 3 of the views are for Microsoft, and 1 is for Adobe Acrobat Pro. As content creators, your workflow probably includes an editing pass or two when you run spell and grammar check. Accessibility checkers are the best of all editing tools and should be part of that editing process. Microsoft products have robust and interactive accessibility checkers. They not only flag inaccessible content, they also guide you in how to fix it, so you're learning as you go. Adobe Acrobat Pro has built-in accessibility checkers for PDFs, which is great because PDFs are notoriously inaccessible. An important note here, however, Google products do not have built-in accessibility checkers. Canvas has 2 levels of accessibility checkers that I want to highlight. On my screen, I have 3 partial screenshots related to Canvas, one of which, the one in the more central place on the screen, is the accessibility checker for individual Canvas pages. When you're in edit mode for your Canvas page, you will see right below the text box or rich text editor where you're typing that there's a little universal human figure for accessibility. It's a little figure with their arms out in a circle. If you hover over it, a little pop-up will say accessibility checker. You can click on that, and that will check the accessibility of that individual Canvas page, just that page alone. The other 2 screenshots are related to the Ally Course Accessibility Report. It's listed in the Canvas navigation pane for anyone who has a Canvas account, and it scans your entire Canvas course. So you're going to get a lot of information. It scans everything, including the files that you have in your Canvas course. The Ally Accessibility Course Report is really a great tool, but the amount of information can feel overwhelming. When you first look at the report, avoid the temptation to just go in and start fixing things as they pop up. Instead, do an assessment of the data and look for patterns. What are the most common items that are flagged as inaccessible? Is there a pattern that you can see? For example, is it that there's a lot of missing alt text for images? Is it color contrast? Is it there are a lot of PDFs that you have to remediate? Identifying patterns can help you pause, ponder, and develop a strategy for making changes over time. Remember what we talked about at the beginning of the video. This is a journey, one of many small steps. And that leads us to my philosophy around learning and building accessibility skills. Progress over perfection. I like to call it POP. Making consistent progress matters, even if we feel like we're fumbling through it a bit. It gets easier as we become more familiar with accessibility skills like the ones we're learning in this video. On the slide is one of my favorite graphics. It's from an artist called Monika, spelled Mounika, and her website is Monika Studios. The graphic has 3 rows of circles. Each row has 6 circles, and each of those circles has a different level of blue in it. I imagine them to be like glasses of water. Some have a little line of blue in them, some are filled maybe halfway, some are 3/4 of the way, some are almost full, but none of them is completely full. And in between each of these rows, there's a different phrase. This is progress, this is also progress, and so is this. And this is what I mean about progress over perfection. We want to start small with something that is both manageable and replicable. Maybe start with one of the 5 tips we're talking about today. Schedule small, consistent chunks of time for accessibility that is proactive and sustainable. Partnering with peers and colleagues in communal work sessions creates a sense of community, collegiality, and it's really fun. And most importantly, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. We're all learning, we're all growing, and we're all building. We're going to make mistakes in this accessibility journey. We might feel frustrated. We're going to have successes too. And that's really the nature of this journey, and it's okay. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and thank you for taking your first steps on our collective journey towards an accessible University of Washington. For more information, go to uw.edu/accessibility/digital.